The person you just shook hands with 3 seconds ago? What was their name? Yep, gone. He's still right there, mid-handshake, but mentally he's already been wiped from the system. Filed under the guy or buddy. And it's not like you weren't paying attention. You said Marcus back to him. You even repeated it in a sentence. Great to meet you, Marcus. Because some LinkedIn article once told you that's how memory works. You will, however, remember that he works in logistics, has a golden retriever, and once got food poisoning in Portugal. All of that stuck. The one piece of information whose entire job was to identify him as a specific human being, it's deleted. This is not a personal failing. This is not early onset anything. This is your brain doing exactly what it evolved to do, which is to be bad at this, on purpose. Let's talk about why. First thing to know, your brain doesn't store information in one big pile. It stores it in networks, webs of association, where one idea drags a dozen others along with it. Say the word banker. Your brain immediately hands you a starter pack. Suits, spreadsheets, a vague sense of distrust, maybe a mortgage rate. That's because banker is a category. It's rich. It's connected to everything you already know. Now, say the name Baker. Just the surname. Nothing happens. There's no starter pack for Baker. It doesn't connect to anything except specifically one particular person's face, and that link is exactly one thread thick. Cut it, and it's gone. No backup. Same as that one photo you never backed up before your phone died. Psychologists actually tested this directly, and it has a name almost too on the nose to be real. The Baker-Baker paradox. Researchers showed two groups of people the exact same photo of a man's face. One group was told his profession, Baker. The other was told his surname, Baker. Same word, same face. Days later, the profession Baker group remembered it dramatically more often than the surname Baker group. Same information, wildly different survival rate and memory. Why? Because profession Baker plugs into a network. Bread, ovens, flour, that specific smell of a bakery at 6 a.m. Surname Baker plugs into nothing. It's a label with no content. And your name is basically the most arbitrary label in the room. Statistically, it was assigned to you based on a family tree, a naming trend, or your parents having just watched a movie they liked. There is nothing about Jessica that tells anyone anything about Jessica. Your brain knows this on some level and treats it accordingly, as disposable metadata. A lot of the time, you didn't actually forget the name. You never had it in the first place. It's not a retrieval problem. It's the delivery truck never showed up problem. This is called an encoding failure, and it happens constantly during introductions because of one very specific, very human reason. The moment someone says their name, your brain is busy doing something it considers far more urgent, rehearsing what you're about to say back. There's an actual documented effect for this called the next in line effect. It was first studied back in 1973 by a psychologist who had people take turns reading words aloud in a group, then tested what they remembered. People were consistently worse at recalling whatever was said in the roughly 9 seconds right before their own turn. Not because they were anxious, specifically. The effect shows up in confident people too, but because their attention had already checked out to go prep their own performance. Translate that into a party. Someone says, "This is Michael." Your brain doesn't think, "Store this." It thinks, "Oh no, my turn. What do I say? Do I do the handshake nod combo? Is my hand sweaty?" And by the time you tune back in, Michael's name has already sailed past the recording booth completely unencoded. You didn't lose it. It was never filmed. So the next time you forget a name 5 seconds after hearing it, that's not a memory problem. That's a bandwidth problem. You allocated 100% of your processing power to your own social performance review, and the new name department got 0. Then there's the version that's arguably worse. When you did store the name, it's in there somewhere, and your brain still won't hand it over. You know it starts with a T. You know it's not Stephen. You are 100% certain you'll remember it the second it stops mattering, like at 3 a.m. tomorrow. This is the tip of the tongue phenomenon, and it's been formally studied since the 1960s. It's a retrieval failure, not a storage failure. The information is sitting in memory, but the pathway to actually pulling it out gets partially blocked, often by a similar-sounding word elbowing its way to the front instead. You're trying to say Deborah, and your brain keeps helpfully offering Diane, which is not just wrong, it's a different woman entirely. And here's a genuinely interesting wrinkle. Research on tip-of-the-tongue states has found that proper nouns, names of people, places, specific things, are disproportionately the words that get stuck this way, more than ordinary vocabulary, which tracks with everything we just covered. Regular words are wired into a dense network of meaning, with a dozen ways in. Names are single, narrow, easily severed threads. When the connection frays even slightly, there's no backup route. The word just hangs there, half-loaded, mocking you. Because, as we all know, human beings are just uniquely, scientifically terrible with names, right? There's this widespread assumption that we're uniquely, specifically bad at names compared to faces. Everyone knows this. It's the most common self-deprecating small talk line in existence. Researchers at the University of York decided to actually test it fairly instead of just accepting the folklore. The problem with most casual comparisons is that they're rigged. We usually test face memory with easy recognition. Have I seen this face before? Yes or no. While testing name memory with hard recall. Produce this exact word from nothing. That's not a fair fight. Recognition is always easier than recall, regardless of what's being remembered. So they redesigned the test to put names and faces through the identical task. Pure recognition, no unfair advantage either way. And the result flipped the script entirely. People recognized names correctly about 83% of the time, versus roughly 64% for faces. Names won, comfortably. In other words, you're not uniquely bad at names. You're bad at recall in general. And names simply get assigned to the hardest version of the test, while faces get graded on a curve. The universal complaint, I'm just bad with names, may be one of the most widespread misdiagnoses people give themselves. Here's the uncomfortable part. Your brain isn't broken. It's running exactly the system evolution handed it, one built to prioritize rich, connected, useful information over arbitrary labels. Which means, if you actually want to beat it, you have to trick the hardware on its own terms. Turn Baker the surname into Baker the job. Attach Marcus to something absurdly specific, an illustrated duck in a hard hat. Whatever sticks. Say the name back immediately. And, this is the hard one, actually finish listening before your internal director starts drafting your next line. You're not fixing a flaw. You're just finally giving the vault a reason to file the thing instead of shredding it. Or, alternative strategy, keep calling everyone buddy and let them think it's a personality trait.